Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is December 21st, in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God has stolen control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And we only have one more broadcast day till Christmas. Free-for-all Friday tomorrow will be the last broadcast before Christmas 2017. Looking forward to the weekend, a long weekend for me, 3 days. I might be working on putting out some more small videos over the weekend. I was practicing some video editing this morning, so I'm still trying to build my skills on video editing to try to do some of these smaller videos. I do have a couple clips from the Humanist report that we're going to talk about. You heard me first talk about the Humanist report when it came to net neutrality. That also fuzzy term, net neutrality, that was made up to make it sound like government regulation was a good thing. And honestly, folks, and I say this was all sincerity, any right-thinking American knows that government regulation equals oppression, and it favors one group over another, and it doesn't make anything free or open. Sorry to tell you. And today, hey, it's a full week. Full week. And the internet's still working. It hasn't broken. Hasn't melted down yet. And I'm going to keep reporting on this. I really am. I got into a discussion real quick here before we get into the topic of the show today. I got into a discussion on Facebook with a guy that supports net neutrality, but by his comments you can tell he's trying to use analogies like water utilities. You know, if you had to pay a shower package and a bathroom package or whatever, all these different water packages. And I said, well, what about us folks that are on wells? Water's not a utility to me. I don't have to pay for it other than the electricity I use. So that analogy kind of actually backs me up because I have full use. I use my water for what I want to use it for. It's free and open. It doesn't have regulations on it like city water does. My water is not fluoride. I don't have fluoride in my water. I don't have chlorine in my water. A couple poisons my body just doesn't need. And we do soften water and take out the hardness of the water so my plumbing stays nice. It doesn't get all clogged up. We also talked about toll roads. I said there's two analogies of toll roads. One, you can choose not to use toll roads, and it takes you longer to go from point A to point B, sometimes. Perfect example, a lot of times I was taking freight out of Harrisburg and going to Cincinnati back in the day. And I could do one or two things. I could go across the PA Turnpike from Harrisburg over to Pittsburgh and get off New Stanton exit and then head over towards Cincinnati that way, or I could go another way, which I went both ways, and there was no time difference for me. Actually, there's three different ways I go: either Turnpike out 70 to Columbus, down 71 to Cincinnati, or I could take 69 through the Cumberland Gap over to West Virginia, over Morgantown, West Virginia, and get on 79 north, and take that back up to New Stanton, Pennsylvania, or actually Washington, PA, get on 70, go to Columbus and 71 south. Or when I got over to Morgantown, I could head south on 69 and go down to Clarksburg, cut across into Ohio there, and get on the Appalachian Highway and take me right over to Cincinnati. And the time difference between the two, because I drove the same way I always drive, and at the speed limits, and it was only 15, 20 minutes difference, a little bit longer time-wise to go the southern route across the Appalachian Highway through southern Ohio, but it was a whole lot cheaper for me to do that. Now he said, well, that analogy doesn't work, and I said, well, what about this one? Because I think it does. I think it does. Either you decide to go what people deem to be the slow route, is non-turnpike, which it really isn't, and that would be an internet without net neutrality. And that term is misleading. That term is uh, it's not what it's not what it means, net neutrality, because the neutrality you get is through legislation, not through free markets, and that's where the big difference is. And so he came back and said, well, your highway analogy doesn't work. And I said, okay, let's take it one step further. On the turnpike, and this is probably the more accurate analogy, on the turnpike, different class vehicles pay different fees. A car pays way less than a Class 8 tractor trailer, because a Class 8 tractor trailer has to pay by axles, and they pay for 5 axles. And I said, and the reason why is because trucks, because of their weight, puts more stress on the highway than a car does. And so in that analogy, streaming services put more stress on the infrastructure because they use more bandwidth. And therefore, if they use more bandwidth, then somebody should pay more, either the shipper or the receiver. Somebody should pay more for that stuff to go through, and I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. And then the person came back with the he said bandwidth isn't finite on the internet. I'm like, wait a minute, it absolutely is finite because it's limited by the infrastructure. Now, are there technologies on the horizon and there are broadband? Wilson, North Carolina, green light, their broadband service there. It is not owned by the public, which is what the Humanist report wants these cities to actually own, through taxpayer dollars. No taxpayer dollars have been paid into Greenlight, the ISP there in Wilson, North Carolina, but everybody can get up to a gigabit of service if they want. That's a lot. Now, I'm set up in my office. All my computers are hooked up with cables that'll go a gigabit, and my router is a gigabit. But I don't have gigabit service coming into my house here yet. And that's because infrastructure is finite. And so that, to me, when he made that statement, to me that just negated all his other statements that this person really doesn't know what they're talking about. Because the only thing I know in the universe that's infinite is God. Everything else is finite, including bandwidth on the internet. But I was watching we talked about taxes yesterday, and I was watching some YouTube videos and news and stuff like I'm on. I go through my news sources and I read, go through my normal reading for the day, scoping out the different news outlets, because I'm not a news producer, I'm a commentator. I don't have reporters. I don't even have researchers yet. So I use other sources that I've filtered through over the years. Some I like better than others because some sources I use tell the whole story, or at least they tell the truth of the matter. And you've heard me talk about the Humanist report quite a bit on the show here, especially through net neutrality, and how they were misrepresenting the truth. They're flat out lying in some cases. And it's no different than with this the tax bill that was passed, and the regressive left, the Social Democrats and the Democrat Party, they're all against this because, like Nancy Pelosi said, it's theft. You're stealing. Well, who are we stealing from? If the people keep more of their money, who are we stealing from? Well, in her mind, we're stealing from government. We're stealing money that could be redistributed to welfare recipients or whoever they wanted to in corporate welfare, depending on your stripe. And trust me, I tell you, Democrats are not below corporate welfare. If you think they are, you're sadly mistaken. And that got me to thinking last night. I'm like, why are these people acting like this? Why are these people acting like we just killed somebody because we're allowing the American people across the board to keep more of their money? And I have a video clip here from the Humanist report. It's a YouTube channel talking about nobody in the middle class or anybody below a certain threshold is getting any money back from this tax reform. we're all being gutted to pay for the tax reform for the rich, to give rich people tax reform. And I'm like, well, that's not true. Especially if you go back through the tax brackets and you drop the percentages down, everybody that pays taxes gets a better deal under the new tax. They pay less in taxes. They get to keep more of their money. So I was like, why is he lying? And this is what's been bugging me a lot lately. Why are these folks, these humanists? And honestly, Nancy Pelosi may claim to be a Catholic, but in my mind, she's a secular humanist. And it finally dawned on me this morning when I was going through show prep, getting the show notes page ready for upload to the DanClementShow.com and do all the rest of my stuff with YouTube and the links and tags and stuff like that. It finally dawned on me why, especially like these humanists, are lying and screaming bloody murder especially about the taxes or deregulation, no matter what it deregulates. It's because humanists don't believe in God. Humanists do not believe in God. They believe that man is the highest order. And they've actually put in place government as their God. And that got me to thinking, well, if government's their God, then if we're lessening the taxes going into government, we're not feeding God. Little g we're talking about here. We're not feeding their God. We're not allowing their God to get all powerful and expand into an authoritarian regime, which we're dangerously close to doing that now. And in some sectors in government, we are already there to an authoritarian government in some sectors of our government. And so, like I said, it dawned on me this morning that this is what's happening here, that the secular humanist has replaced Jehovah God for man God. And government is thy name. And it started everything I've been going through the past few months here with net neutrality and taxes and government and wanting to deregulate this and try to get the truth out. With humanists, everything's relative. The ends justify the means. And this is what we've been dealing with in earnest, especially ever since I switched over and started doing a daily YouTube show. We've been dealing with this in earnest about secular humanism and how they look to government as their God and how they look at regulation as like the Bible from their God. This is the word of their God, government, the federal code. It's their Bible. And if you start taking things out of their Bible, they're going to get very, very defensive with this. And again, like I said, I've been dealing with this for years now, and just really hit it hard since I started doing the YouTube videos. And again, this is sometimes I might be slow on the uptake, and it's percolating the back of my head when I do some of these things. But like I said, it just came to me today, and I have a story in here by Matt Costella over at feesite.com or .org, excuse me. It says Secular Humanism, the Religion of the Man God. And then I have one. This story has some age on it, has some whiskers. Matter of fact, he put this out about the same time I got out of the Navy, back in 1984. Alan Turner from the West Side Church of Christ, Humanism in the Government. I don't have the links in here for this, but apologeticspress.org. You just look up Apologetics Press and just type in humanism in the search. You'll get a bunch of different articles talking about the dangers of humanism, how when man is worshipped, how these things go awry. And you have to apply the same reasoning with the denominational world that takes part of God's word, big G God. The Bible takes part of his word and either adds to it or takes away from God's word to get their denomination and their creed, as it were. And this is all part of humanism. That even in denominations, they want man to be the highest pinnacle, even though they don't say that. Their actions sort of betray them. And I shouldn't even say sort of. Their actions do betray them. I can tell you all day long I'm not something, but if my actions that I perform throughout the day says that I am whatever you're saying that I am that. My words are hollow. They mean nothing. And so, like I said, today, this just, and some people have gotten this already, and that's okay. And other people haven't gotten it yet. And some people are following me on YouTube. I'm still putting up. I had to go back through Blog Talk Radio and delete a lot of old episodes before I could start uploading new episodes. Now, fear not, I do have all the old episodes going clear back to the beginning, downloaded at my Seriously Simple podcasting site that's hooked into my show notes page. So I have all those, but I'm allowed to upload 30 hours a month on my free plan at Blog Talk Radio, so I'm going to continue that. I just had to go through and clean those up, so I'll still be putting things over there. But through Blog Talk Radio, through which I was podcasting for the longest time before I got onto YouTube and started broadcasting my show, and all the different I'm on Stitcher. If you haven't seen a new episode come up on Stitcher, we were having an issue with my RSS URL for my podcast feed. They're taking care of it today. They said it should be up in a couple hours, and all the new episodes that I've put up on at the DanClemensShow.com on my podcast pages should be showing up there. I'm still working with iTunes. For some reason, iTunes won't accept my podcast feed, and I had to email them and their technical folks over there to find out what I need to do, because this was a generated RSS feed by Bluehost and WordPress. I've got emails into those folks to help me out to see what I can do to get it up on iTunes, because I want to get rid of the Blog Talk Radio feed to iTunes and switch it over to the Dan Clemens Show. But I'm on my 942nd episode, folks. I started this journey back in 2007, took a few years off when I got a dispatch job down at Millerstown, PA. And when I got laid off from that, I started my journey back up again. And so I've been fighting the status quo, as it were, in this country, in the government, trying to explain to people how regulations never, ever, they never fix what they're intended to fix. They don't. Even state regulations, which I do submit freely to everybody, that the state has the control over the environment if the people of that state grant the state through their constitution, their state's constitution, if they're allowed to govern over that. And I believe that's a state power, but the states never gave that power to the federal government. They never gave the power of education, of governing over our children's education, to the federal government. There's a lot of things they didn't give to the federal government. And another one of these is the FCC, the FTC, all these agencies, that you could make an argument through the Commerce Clause, but that has to be a pretty good argument that's actually spelled out. It can't be ambiguous at all. It has to, no muddy waters here. It has to be crystal clear that you can see from the top to the bottom on it. And I don't know bureaucrats can do that. I really don't. And so with net neutrality, some of these states, and there's 20 states now that want to sue the FCC. I don't think they have any standing to sue the FCC to stop net neutrality. But they're vowing to do this, plus they're going to keep net neutrality in their states. Now, again, what happens if your internet access is across state lines? Honestly, I think a lot of these pro-net neutrality folks, especially in the states, are just cutting off their own noses to spite their faces. There's a new technology my buddy Nick from church said, and I haven't had a chance to research it. Was it a mesh networking? And I read a little bit about it. It looks intriguing. I want to do some more research on it. But there's always technologies coming up. Always technologies coming up. But getting back to the taxes. Now, taxation is an enumerated power of the federal government. But that has limits too. The Constitution puts limits on it because it enumerates the power of the federal enumerated powers. And those are the only powers that the government is allowed to spend on and have supremacy in. And we're talking the federal government now. Like I said, and humanists look to the federal government or any government as God. And if you take away money from God, you're starving God out, and that's no good. You know, you're a heretic. I'm a heretic because I want to keep more of my money. And the lie that's being told by these humanists and by these politicians like Nancy Pelosi is that by allowing the American people to keep more of what they earn through paying less taxes is stealing from other Americans. That's the way she put it. That's the way this gentleman on the Humanist report, that's the way he puts it. And folks, it's a lie. You're not stealing from the American people if you allow the taxpayers to keep more of what they earn. All that's happening is we're lessening the power of the federal government by not allowing them to have so much tax dollars. And the other flip side of this coin that needs to be taken care of is limiting the federal government's ability to borrow. We are $20 trillion in debt. The credit door should be closed, period. The credit door should be closed. If this were any other business, corporation, individual that had this much debt, they'd be going into bankruptcy court to try to get some relief from it. But the federal government can print money, and they can borrow money, and they can tax the American citizenry, businesses, whatever they want to tax to make up the shortfalls. And if they don't make it up in taxes, they can borrow it. And if they can't borrow it, they'll print it. So there has to be a limit. There has to be a limit on how much money is in circulation, how much the federal government can borrow. You see what I'm saying, folks? There has to be, and how much they can tax the American people. And I still think, even under the new tax reform, I still think we're taxed too much. Are we heading in the right direction? Absolutely. Is Donald Trump and the GOP to be credited for this? Absolutely. Are the folks out there that are, and let me make a correction yesterday. I was saying wailing and gnashing of teeth. Now, for some reason, I thought that was in one of the translations I read. Now, maybe it might be, I have on my iPhone, I have on my Android cell phone a Bible app that has some older Bibles in it, like the Geneva Bible and stuff like that. And I might have gotten off there, but in the more modern translations, it's weeping and gnashing of teeth. So I just want to make that little correction. Of course, weeping can be considered wailing. You know, wailing is just a louder form of weeping where you're really crying and crying and crying. And this is what's happening with the humanists out there. This is happening with the Democrats. This is happening with the social democrats and all their supporters across the fruited land here. They are weeping and gnashing their teeth because their God has been injured. Their God government has been injured because we're taking away its food. Taxes, money is the government's food. Ill-gotten gains, in my book, is the government's food. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about this. This is just, like I said, it's to me it's kind of funny to see these people weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, some people might come back, it's not funny to see somebody weep. Well, it depends on what they're weeping about. You know, and we see this all the time, folks, and it's happened to me, and if you're honest, it's probably happened to you. We do something dumb and stupid, and we hurt ourselves, not seriously, not life-threatening, but we hurt ourselves, and it's funny how we did it, and I've been laughed at because, I did dumb and stupid and got hurt, and I wasn't real happy they were laughing at me. Later on, when I got to thinking about it, I was laughing with them. And this is, like I said, I find this funny that these people are weeping. over this, and they're gnashing their teeth. Oh, this shouldn't happen. Ah! And I'm glad it is. Because we're trying to restore and save the republic. We're trying to restore and save the republic politically. From a biblical standpoint, me being a Christian, preaching the gospel, I'm trying to recover and restore lost souls for God. Sharing the gospel with them, giving them an opportunity to make that decision whether they're going to follow God or not. So again, when it comes to lost souls, I don't laugh. But when it comes to lost revenues to the federal government and these people are carrying on the way they're carrying on, it's funny. I get a good chuckle out of it. Because with secular humanists or humanists in general, this idea where man is God or government is God, the ends justify the means. What are their ends? For government to be authoritarian. And so how do we get there? Any means necessary, or by any means necessary. There's a movement out there in the social justice tyrant community out there, by any means necessary, that we're going to accomplish this. And one of those means is lying. Real quick here before I get into the commercials and stuff like this, I don't know, let me see here. I didn't really want to do this, but let me get over here to the YouTube and just see. And to me, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter. I've been chided because I only have a handful of subscribers. The Humanist Report has 158,900 subscribers. Okay, 158,000 plus, almost 159,000 subscribers compared to my handful of subscribers. But my question is that I want to bring up to you folks is I wonder how many of these, and going through the comments, I can see a lot of them do not research this stuff for themselves, but how many of these take what this gentleman over at the Humanist Report says, and again, so I got to get his, I'll have to get his name. I keep forgetting to do that, and I'll make sure, I'll do that. Let me just get over here. The Humanist Report with Mike Figueredo. He's a younger guy. Nothing wrong with that, as far as his age or anything like that. But I just wonder how many of his subscribers actually fact check him. Because it didn't take long for me to fact check what he was saying in this one video that I'm going to have. I'll have a link up to the video that he was talking about here. And like I said, again, it amazes me. It amazes me how these folks get away with not being fact checked by their own listeners. And I get fact checked all the time. Especially with my spelling of words. And let me say this, and I don't know if I corrected myself. I think I did. I just want to go back. I keep calling myself a rogue scholar. And when I did this weeks ago, I spelled rogue like, and what I spelled was actually rouge. R-O-U-G-E. But that's not what, I'm not a rouge scholar. I'm a rogue scholar, R-O-G-U-E. And that's just a play on words from a Rhodes scholar, like Bill Clinton was. Because I'm self-taught. And this is the one thing, before we go to commercials real quick, I know I said this a couple seconds ago. This is the one thing you have to understand. Once you've researched and found out what the truth is, and somebody else says something along the same lines of whatever you studied, whether it's religion, the Bible, or whether it's economics or government, especially when we have a constitution, we have the Federalist Papers, we have just a mountain of writings and information from the founding era of our country. Once you've found the truth and are well steeped in it, well studied, well grounded in the truth, when you hear something that isn't the truth, it's real easy for you to pick out. And it's not hard, honestly, folks, once you get to that point, it's not hard for you to root out the lies that are being told. Because you have the truth, especially if you've studied over the years and you've had the truth, and keep it and continue to study in it, make sure you're well grounded in it, and make sure you can answer accusations against it or arguments against your truth. And I'm not even saying my truth in particular, but I should say the truth, because there is truth and there is facts out there. You know, we just can't make up our own truths and our own facts to fit ourselves, but that's what a lot of folks in the humanist movement do, because the ends justify the means with these folks. Today's show being brought to you by one of my affiliate marketers on the DanClemensShow.com, my show notes page, is Bluehost. Now, that's the hosting service that has the website, my show notes page, DanClemensShow.com. And they're fantastic. And they get back to me quickly all the time. I send them an email. I'm going to get up on a chat this afternoon because I have a problem with my RSS URL for YouTube, for iTunes. And I know they'll help me real quickly. And so if you want a web hosting site, and there's plenty of them out there, folks, that you can host your web content on, and they take care of everything in the background. And if that's what you want, that's fine. I wanted a little more flexibility with my website. So I took the next step. I got the next level up where I use WordPress, and Bluehost is a WordPress-ready hosting service. Bluehost WordPress is a one-click. I just hit the install button, and I just make sure it's matching my version of Bluehost, and everything's good to go. I go in to set things up, and boom, it's done. And if I have a problem, I got to chat with help, and I can go on there and get help, and they help me out right away. They got people standing by 24/7 on that chat. And I've tested it out. The first time I used it, it was around midnight. And he got back to me right away. Boom, boom, boom. 5 minutes later, we had the problem solved. And that was when I was having an issue viewing my web pages over at the show notes page. So if you're looking for a hosting service where you have a little bit more control, but it's still manageable by you or your staff, check out Bluehost. And please go to the DanClemensShow.com and click on the Bluehost widget at the top of the page, and you'll be helping supporting the show because they are an affiliate marketer. And it'll open yourself up to a wonderful world of hosting. And like I said, they're fantastic. I don't think I'm going to leave these guys anytime soon at all. You know, because I think I found a really good home for my show here at Bluehost.com through the Dan Clements Show show notes website. All right. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 67 through 69. Now, yesterday we were in the book of Isaiah, and we talked about the prophecy of John the Baptizer. And this is the end of the fulfillment of this, where Elizabeth has the baby, and Zechariah still couldn't speak. And they asked, what name we're going to name the baby, and the wife said John. And they looked at Zacharias. No one in your family's named John. And he said, well, give me something I can scratch a word down on. He said he wrote on a tablet, his name's John. And as soon as he did that, his tongue was loosened, and he goes into praising God. And he says, and his father Zacharias, he's talking about John the Baptizer's father, Zacharias was filled with the Holy Ghost and prophesying, saying, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people, and has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. And John the Baptizer was to proclaim that the kingdom of heaven was at hand and be the forerunner to proclaim Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And this is on the tail end of that fulfillment of that prophecy that was prophesied all that many years ago back in the book of Isaiah. The quote mail today is, the love of God is one of the great realities of the universe, a pillar upon which the hope of the world rests. But it is a personal, intimate thing too. God does not love populations. He loves people. He loves not masses, but men. And it's by A.W. Tozer. And this is true. when he talks about, he'll judge the nations and that, nations are made up of individuals. And just like our republic, individuals are sovereign over the government, over the state, local, and federal government. Because we came before the government. We set up the local government, who set up the state governments, who set up the federal government. So who's sovereign? It's not the federal government, it's not the state government, it's not the local government. The people are sovereign. Individuals. As a group, we are sovereign over the government. Today's short Bible lesson, why the thief on the cross doesn't negate baptism. And this is a huge argument in the where they claim that, baptism is not necessary because the thief on the cross. And that's a very shaky argument to base your salvation on. It's a very shaky argument in that. So please go over to the DanColumbusShow.com and click on this link here for the short Bible lesson. It's by Jack Wilkie. He posted this on May 24th of this year over at focuspress.org. Now, let me get into this one, Secular Humanism, The Religion of the Man-God by Matt Costella, May 13, 2015, over theosite.org is a huge article. And I just want to touch on that just real quickly in the beginning of that. For over 100 years, secular humanists have sought to lay a framework for their man-centered religion by issuing a series of manifestos or declarations intended to plainly state the foundation of their beliefs. Over the past century, secular humanists have published 6 different declarations in addition to numerous other books and articles, which differ slightly in emphasis and tone and yet are cohesive in the core aspects of the religion of secular humanism. Unless otherwise noted, all quotes taken from the Humanist Manifesto 2000, which was first published in the fall of 1999 issue of Free Inquiry magazine. Humanist Manifesto 1933. Recommend a form of non-theistic religious humanism as an alternative to the religions of the age, as well as national, economic, and social planning. Sounds like one of them authoritarian governments we talk about that happened over in Europe around the turn of the last century. Humanist Manifesto 1973 addressed the issue that arose on the world scene since the first manifesto included the Cold War, communism, the United Nations, the sexual revolution, and the women's movement, to name only a few. It defended the right to birth control, abortion, divorce, sexual freedom between consenting adults, and euthanasia, advocated tolerance of alternative lifestyles, and left room for both naturalistic humanism and liberal religious humanism. A secular humanist declaration in 1980 sought to defend Humanist Manifesto 2, which had come under heavy attack, particularly from fundamental religious and right-wing political forces in the United States. The declaration countered the attack of the fundamentalists and political conservatives who said secular humanism is actually a religion in itself. The declaration said that secular humanism expressed a set of moral values and a non-theistic philosophical and scientific viewpoint that could not be equated with religious faith. The Declaration of Independence, Interdependence, 1988, called for a new global ethics and the building of a world community due to the advancement of the global institutions that already existed. The Human Manifesto 2000, released by the International Academy of Humanism and signed by over 100 of the world's top intellectuals and scientists, including 9 Nobel laureates, it reiterates many of the humanist ideas already present in the previous manifestos, yet it moves a step further by introducing the need for a new planetary humanism and advocating a new global agenda, which includes new planetary global system of government. Paul Kurtz, president of the International Academy of Humanism and editor-in-chief of Free Inquiry magazine, drafted the Humanist Manifesto in 2000, as well as 3 previous humanist documents. Humanist Manifesto 2, a secular humanist declaration, and a declaration of interdependence. And finally, the Humanist Manifesto 3, 2003, published by the American Humanist Association, and really reiterated the basic principles of the 1933 document and the Humanist Manifesto 2000. What is secular humanism? And this is the question that needs to be asked and answered. The Council for Secular Humanism defines secular humanism in the following synopsis by Fritz Stevens, Edward Tobash, Tom Hill, Mary Ellen Sykes, and Tom Flynn. What is secular humanism, as found on the Council of Secular Humanism website in 1999? A conviction that dogmas, ideologies, traditions, whether religious, political, or social, must be weighed and tested by each individual and not simply accepted on faith. Let me stop there. And this is where a lot of humanists fall down, especially those who follow humanists. They put a lot of faith in their leaders in the humanist movement. And they do accept the premises of humanism by faith. By faith. Another one, commitment to the use of critical reason, factual evidence, and scientific methods of inquiry rather than faith and mysticism in seeking solutions to human problems and answers to important human questions. And this, again, all these points that they're bringing out here about what secular humanism or what humanism is trying to put in a frame of mind that, especially this thing with science and religion, they don't mesh. They don't mesh. And that's absolutely not true. Now, although the Bible is not a scientific book, everywhere where it talks about something that's scientific, it's absolutely right. It's not considered a totally historical book or a book of history, but every time it talks about something. And the best example I can give you is the Hittite nation. For hundreds of years, scientists, archaeologists, which are scientists, said they've never found any evidence of a Hittite nation, so the Bible's wrong, until I believe it was 1949 when they stumbled upon, surprise, surprise, the Hittite nation. And so, again, there's medical science in the Bible, but it's not a medical book. It's funny how they want to just attribute faith and mysticism to the Bible when faith itself, the actual definition of faith itself, is based on evidence. Based on evidence. They have a misunderstanding of what faith is. A primary concern with fulfillment, growth, creativity for both the individual and humankind in general. A constant search for objective truth with the understanding that new knowledge and experience constantly alter our imperfect perception of it. And this is another thing I have with the the secular humanisms, or humanists in general. Their constant search for objective truth. Objective truth is just that. It's objective. It doesn't change. It does not change. And in their other sentence here, there's a constant search for objective truth with the understanding that new knowledge and experience constantly alter our imperfect perception of it. But the problem is, once you find the truth, very little, it's just like scientific laws, like gravity, thermodynamics, things like that. Those are objective truths. And I don't think you're going to find, and most scientists will probably tell you the same thing, these are laws of science that you're not going to find anything else to them. And I think a lot of times the humanism, they're continually searching for knowledge, but never coming to an understanding of what they're searching for. A concern for this life and the commitment to making it meaningful through better understanding of ourselves, our history, and intellectual and artistic achievements, and the outlooks of those who differ from us. And that's not true. If you differ from humanists, you are put on a lower level than the humanist. You are looked down upon by the humanists because you're not scientific. You're relying on mysticism and faith. So you're not equal in their eyes, folks, in other words. A search for viable individual, social, and political principles of ethical conduct, judging them on their ability to enhance human well-being and individual responsibility. A conviction that with reason and open marketplace of ideas, goodwill, and tolerance, progress can be made in building a better world for ourselves and our children. These all sound good. But the problem is, they don't even follow their own reasoning. What good does lying about something do? What good does deceiving people with lies do? Because the truth will win out in the end. the truth will win out in the end. Now, it may take truth for a while to get traction, because it's not hard to create a lie. It's hard to convince people that the truth is better than a lie, and it's hard to convince people that they've been following a lie, because people don't want to be seen as fools or foolish in their pursuit of knowledge. They really don't. And what happens is, when people get burnt by humanists or whatever, even by religion, when they get burnt with some lies of denominational religious movements out there, they shy away from things, especially if someone's trying to tell them the truth, because they don't want to. And honestly, folks, I've studied with enough people over the years. I wish I could study with some more. But I've had friends study with folks that people are not willing to leave their convictions, even when they're showing the truth that contradicts their convictions, because of family tradition, or this is the way my great-great-great-great-grandfather did it, and this was passed down through the years, and I'm not going to cast aspersions on him by saying what he believed in was false compared to whatever you're trying to teach me, or the Bible. So people hold on to these, and I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist or anything like this, but people hold on to their faith well beyond what they should if they're showing the truth. And it can be proven that it is the truth. And just the last little thing on here, because secular humanists place such great emphasis on science, reason, and technology, many wonder how secular humanists view the religious and supernatural. The answer, according to the aforementioned authors, is as follows. Secular humanism accepts a worldview, a philosophy called naturalism, in which the physical laws of the universe are not superseded by non-material or supernatural entities such as demons, gods, or other spiritual beings outside the realm of the natural universe. They don't believe in any of this, even though, and they use this scientific method, and this is what I have to laugh about a little bit, even though all the evidence in creation research science points to a designer, intelligent design in nature and man, in the world, in the universe, points to it. All the evidence points to intelligent design. They refuse to believe that. They absolutely refuse. Matter of fact, most humanists, if you talk to them, they don't view creation science as a true science. And creation science is just trying to answer the question, where did we come from? Just like evolution is trying to answer the question, where do we come from? One says it's an evolutionary process that keeps getting longer and longer and longer the more years I'm alive. It used to be millions of years, now it's billions of years, and pretty soon it's probably going to be trillions of years. But the other one's looking into to see if there's any evidence that this world and the universe and everything around us was created by a supernatural being. And they don't even deem that as a reasonable science. Now, I don't have to rely on the humanists to tell me what science is or science is not. The scientific inquiry, you make a hypothesis and you go see if you can supply the evidence to support that hypothesis. Evolution is yet to do that. But you know what? Creation science, they're bringing up so much evidence that points back to God, an intelligent designer of this world. And that's what we're dealing with here. Because with secular humanists, the mankind is the pinnacle of evolution. There is nothing above mankind, and whatever mankind makes, i.e. governments, that should be worshipped. And these humanists, these intellectuals that are high up in the humanist, are the high priests of humanism. I have this other article here real quick. Let me get over here and make sure I have it up on. Yeah, I got it up over here. Humanism and the government. This is an article by Alan Turner that he posted back in 1984. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the first couple paragraphs. He said, With a presidential election looming over our heads, and he's talking about Ronaldus Magnus back in 1984 when I got out of the Navy, I thought this was a good piece of the influence of government on our lives and our culture. The entire article not fit in the space of the bulletin. A link is provided from our website. The special issue on secular humanism proves, if nothing else, that those who have been speaking and writing on this subject no longer sit as lonely birds on the roof. I'm happy to share with you the fruit of my study of this subject. It is inevitable that any study of secular humanism would cause us to think about the influence it may be having on our government. I think you may find that this has had a much stronger influence than you had suspected. When we think of the federal government, we normally think of a vast bureaucracy, so vast, in fact, that is almost beyond comprehension. But in reality, we are only talking about 537 elected and 9 appointed men and women. Surprised? Well, let's count them. 1 president, 1 vice president, 100 senators, 435 representatives, and 9 Supreme Court justices. As ours is a, he says, democratic republic, little d, and it should be a capital R on it, republic, but we'll let that slide on this reading here. These 546 people are the government. The vast bureaucracy, in theory, simply supports these 546 people in doing whatever it is government's supposed to do. Traditionally, government, at least our government, to exist for the common good of the citizenry. Obviously, if government is to provide for the common good of the people, then it must have an opinion as to the substance of that common good. A secular humanist has become quite persuasive in our society. We should expect to see conflicts arising in government as it attempts to provide for the common good of a people who are sharply divided between a biblically based worldview and a secular humanist worldview. When we use the term worldview, we are speaking of the grid through which we view the world. Naturally, there will be a sharp contrast between those two world government attempts to legislate morality, i.e. homosexuality, abortion, marriage, divorce, capital punishment, pornography, infanticide, euthanasia, etc. That the conflict between these two worldviews is the most fundamental and decisive issue of our time. The issue is not quite common to New Testament Christians who seek after the New Testament order, for it is one of authority. Is God still ruling in both the religion and the secular affairs of men? And is man totally autonomous, answerable only to himself and the institution he has created? These two alternatives underlie most of the major and minor conflicts of our day. Contrary to what some may think, secular humanism is not the brand name of organizationally identifiable movement. It is rather an ideology. And all-encompassing, all-permeating worldview, ethos, and attitude. It is the antithesis to religion. And this is by Klaus Blockmule, Psychology, Crux Magazine, June 1983. And he's going to go down through here. This reading is a little bit long here, but you get the flavor of what he's talking about here. There's two views at point here. You have a religious worldview, and I call it a Christian worldview that sort of I filter everything through, and then you have the secular humanist worldview that people filter everything through. And although myself being a Christian, I encourage and I welcome skepticism of my beliefs, because I believe as steel sharpens steel, so does arguments against what I believe help me strengthen my convictions. And honestly, I think the humanist movement is lacking in that, because there's a lot of intolerance for a religious worldview. There really is. And a lot of humanists won't even listen to what you have to say. They just write you off as a know-nothing mystic that has no evidence for what you're talking about, and they don't even want to see it. If you bring forth the evidence, they don't even want to see it. And one of the funniest ones I ever got in arguments, or not arguments, it was a debate on when I used to go into some chat rooms, was over the issue of whether a bat was a bird. Back in the Old Testament, in the law, when the food laws were being passed down. There's a long list in the book of Leviticus. I believe it's Leviticus chapter 19, if my foggy memory serves me correctly. Oh, wait a minute. No, not 19. Let me think here a second. Let me get down here. Oh, is Leviticus chapter 11. Okay. And he goes through this whole thing about these different birds, like owls and nighthawks, and the cuckow, the hawk after its kind, the little owl, the cormorant, and the great owl, the swan, and the pelican, and the gyre eagle, the stork, the heron, after their kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. The bat is the end of the reading there. And the beginning of that, when they were starting to talk about this, they talked about winged creatures. Let me see here. I'm just trying to find the verse up here. I believe it was one of the older. Wait a minute, that's not the translation I wanted to be in. New King James. Oh, he says here, and these you shall regard as abomination among the birds, up in verse 13. Okay, I got to get a different, let me put up the different view here because I'm looking totally away. Up in Leviticus chapter 13, and these you shall regard as abomination among the birds. Well, one of the arguments that came up was that a bird's not a bat, so since a bat's not a bird, therefore this whole section of Scripture is in error, so the whole Word of God is in error. And I told them this was a translation error. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, go back to the original Hebrew. In the original Hebrew, instead of bird, there in verse 13, abomination among the birds, in the original Hebrew, the word means winged creatures. Winged creatures, which could include birds, which could include bats. So here it's a translation error, not an error in the Word of God. Man made this error, not God. And this is one of the arguments they point to. And I've had this thrown up to me a couple times. And it's real easy to combat. Just get yourself, and I have it on my bookshelf over here. I have a Hebrew and Greek dictionary, dictionary. And I can look up in the Bible and see what the word is in Hebrew as far as I have a Strong's Concordance and numbers. I got all the study materials, and you can see what that word is. So again, there is a lot of the arguments that secular humanists say that the contradictions in the Bible aren't contradictions. It's either their perception, or it was like in this case in the book of chapter 11 of the book of Leviticus, they mistranslated and said they're birds instead of winged creatures. Very simple to refute. But even then, I had people that just refused to listen to that. They would not believe it, even though I showed them the evidence. And they had a couple people in the chat room said they weren't going to believe it. Just because I disproved this one doesn't mean the Bible's right. But they were hanging, before I disproved that, they were hanging the whole right or wrongness of the Bible on this. Well, if this verse is wrong, the rest of the Bible can't be right. Oh, by the way, that's Rocky Mountain High Brand drink. It's not any adult beverages or anything like that. All right, so this comes, and I want to wrap up the show here. It's 1 o'clock now. I want to wrap up the show here in a little bit, but I want to show these videos. I really do. This first one, and I'll have to get everything set up here. This first one is talking about how the GOP Tax Reform and Jobs Act is a scam. And it's a short clip from the Humanist report. And this is a part of the video rebuttal of this.
As you all know, House Republicans voted for a tax reform plan that raises taxes on individuals making less than $75,000 each year in order to pay for trillions of dollars in tax cuts for the richest Americans in this country.
Okay. Anybody under $75,000, you don't get a tax cut. This is what you're doing, is paying the taxes for everybody else, okay? let me get to it here. And hopefully you can see that if you're watching YouTube. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you're going to just have to go over to the danclemenshow.com show notes page and look up, it's called Impacts of the Tax Cuts and Job Act, okay? And this is from the Tax Foundation. And I trust them. I haven't found them to lie in the past. Okay? And if you look at the top line, you'll see ordinary income. It has, if you go to the second, marital status, single, married. Okay? And it goes across their income: 30,000, 52, 75,000, 85, 165, 325, and 2 million. And then over in retirement with Joe and Ethan, married, $48,000. Okay, retired, and it breaks down a lot of things: no kids, tax deferred retirement contribution, all the way on the left there, itemization, current law, proposed law. And every one of those, what they pay in this scenario under the current law and what they'll pay in the proposed law, every one of those in the proposed law is a win for the taxpayer. It's a decrease in the amount of taxes they pay. Now, if you look at that from James clear over to Laura and Seth, the $2 million income, Seth realized a $379 yearly tax savings. $379 is still $379. Okay? And I'm not sure, because I was reading through this and I couldn't find it in there, and I'm going to reread it. I'm not sure if this includes the $12,000 and the $24,000, your first monies that you make aren't taxed, okay? But I think what they're doing is comparing apples to apples here under the current law and proposed law without that first zero tax bracket. But every tax bracket saves, every single one of them, from James, from left to right, to 30,000 up to the 2,000, and even the retired couple. Okay, $379 saved, $1,892 saved, $1,777 saved. $2,254 saved, $2,224. Lauren, the $325,000 bracket, they save $9,617, and the $2 million bracket, they save $18,900. So when he says that anybody under $75,000 is not getting a tax break, he's wrong. Every one of those brackets from 30 on up to 75,000 are getting their tax liabilities at 30,000 is 9% less. At 52,000, it's 36% less. At 75,000, and these first three are single, okay, is 11% less, okay. And then it goes into the married, it starts in the married brackets. These next ones are married brackets. At 85,000, it's a 20% savings. At 165,000, it's 8% savings. At 325,000, it's 13% savings. And at $2 million, it's 3% savings. But every one of them gets a savings on their tax bill. So when Mike Figueredo tells folks that anybody making $75,000 or less are not getting any tax cuts, is an out and out lie. And matter of fact, I put in the show notes page, I put up in the show notes page there, and I'll get back. Let me get back over to this real quick. That is the, like I said, the chart you're seeing up on YouTube is the chart I'm looking off of, and I read the whole article, and they do a pretty decent job of doing this. Again, I didn't see where they had the zero bracket in there, but if you want to compare apples to apples, you just got to keep that zero bracket out. But everybody, every single person who pays taxes gets a reduction in how much they pay their taxes, period. So to tell people, to tell folks that are following you on your video that anybody below 75,000 are not getting a tax break is an out and out lie. And why does he do it? Well, only he can answer the true question of that, but my suspicions are because government is his God, and any less money going to his God is an affront to his God. You know, because I've been finding out that more and more millennials and the generation next after them, they've come up totally through our government schools and have been indoctrinated that government is the end all to be all to everything. And the humanist doctrine has been preached in this country for 100 years, and with very little attention given to it as far as confronting it and debunking it. And thank God for the internet. Thank God we're able to come on here and see these videos and say, man, that doesn't sound right. Because everything else I was reading about the tax plan says every tax bracket is a drop. And it's like, yeah, every tax bracket is a drop. Every single one of them. So it's, when I see a video like that and there's a whopper of a lie right at the beginning of the video, I can pretty much with confidence say the rest of the video is going to be just like it. And I'll prove it to you. The next thing he talks about here is the pass-through. The pass-through business. And we'll get over here and I'll tell you exactly what the pass-through is, but I want to play this video to begin with on this, you know, to let you know what is the pass-through tax.
So there you have it. That's what's new. Now, getting to the original story, CNBC's Lauren Hirsch explains the provision allows for a tax deduction on income made from pass-through entities, like real estate LLCs, including those with few or no employees. It could thus benefit Senator Bob Corker from Tennessee and President Donald Trump, who both have real estate income. According to the website Open Secrets, Trump owns corporations operating as LLCs. Pass-through entities structured so that profits pass through to their owners before being subject to the corporate tax. The owners then report that profit as their personal income and pay individual tax on it. Such companies can be small businesses, S corporations, or LLCs. With the new language, even companies with no employees can deduct a percentage of pass-through income, thereby lowering the rate they pay. As first reported on by the International Business Times, Corker originally voted against the tax bill, but then supported it after the provision was added. He told International Business Times in an interview he only read a summary of the bill. On Monday, Senator Orrin Hatch, the head of the Senate's Tax Writing Committee, denied the implication in news reports that Republicans added the measure at the last minute to win Corker's vote.
All right, folks. He claims, and CNBC, and again, I have these links up towards the bottom of the show notes page off of his website. I also have the link up to this video that I took clips out of. He claims that the pass-through tax was a last-minute provision. To win over senators. Folks, we actually talked about this clear back in May, June of this year. I'll have to look up, I'll link to the show. Let me make a note here. Link to show with first pass through. I'm going to link to that So, we were talking about it even way back when. This was one of the original provisions when the tax plan came out, when President Trump actually unveiled his tax plan, was this pass-through. So it's not something that's recent. Again, when you look at a video and you see a whopper being perpetrated in the beginning of the video, you can bet your bottom dollar that anything else that he puts forth in that video is a whopper. I don't care who is putting it forth. CNBC got it wrong. This was not something that was put in the last minute. And honestly, I like I said, I don't have the research staff that possibly Michael has on the Humanist report. But you'd think they'd be able to find out whether or not Trump is going to benefit from this or not, or whether or not any of these other guys are going to benefit from this, especially if they have a business. Now, here's some of the key. Let me make sure I'm over here on this. This is an article. This is an article from the taxfoundation.org, an overview of pass-through businesses in the United States. Now, this was written back in, let me get over here. January 21st, 2015. A lot of times correlating or compiling all these numbers, you don't have like last year's taxes, 2016 yet, because they're still compiling all the data and everything. So usually it's a couple year lag on it, but it's still pretty indicative of what's going on today. Now, and there's, if you go to the dancombashow.com and an overview of tax or pass-through businesses in the United States, there's an actual PDF with a special report on this. There's a link there, you can go get that. Okay, and I'll also put that link in the show notes. Got 3 links to put up here. Now here's some of the key. Pass-through business income is taxed on the business's owner's tax returns through the individual income tax codes. Because a lot of sole proprietors, a lot of small businesses, and even LLCs and stuff like that, or S-corps they're called. They're still a corporation, but an S-corp. Before, they were paying in excess of 50% in some states for this pass-through tax. And what this does in the tax provision, it takes away that extra taxation on this. Now, pass-through businesses face only one layer of taxes on their profits compared to the double taxations faced by C corporations. And this is where it changes that, okay? The number of pass-through businesses has nearly tripled since 1980, while the number of traditional C corporations has declined. And that's because of LLCs and some other changes in corporate law. Pass-through businesses earn more net business income than C corporations. Pass-through businesses employ more than 50% of the private sector workforce and accounted for 37% of the total private sector payroll in 2011. And we're not talking about huge corporations here, folks. We really aren't. These are small companies. Grew enough, I could become an LLC, and still, if I was making enough income, anything I make off this right now is going on my personal income taxes, and I could keep it that way as pass-through. Although pass-through businesses are smaller than C corporations on average, they are not all small businesses. Many people work for large pass-through companies. We're like a single family that owns a company. Could be a pass-through. The majority of pass-through business income is taxed at top individual tax rates, but that's still less than what they're paying now. Tax reform aimed at improving the comprehensiveness of U.S. business needs to address the individual income tax code due to the economic importance through the business. Now, he goes on down, he'll talk about that, but that's just some key findings. It's not like Mike over at the Humanist Report makes it out to be, that it's just these big multinational corporations or what, these huge corporations. We're talking about mom and pop stores that might have a couple employees. That I know some mom and pop businesses that make some good money. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They're actually, some of them I know, according to the IRS, would be in the top 1%. Because I know some small mom and pop businesses that they earn in excess of $1 million a year in their business. And so, yeah, why wouldn't they want to take advantage of a lower tax rate? And again, this was in the beginning. This was not put in the bill, and I'll link to, like I said, I'm going to link to the pass-through that I talked about on the show earlier and give you the episode number and the link to all that. So again, the Humanist report gets it wrong. They're lying. Now, the reasons why they're lying, they're going to have to tell you that. I gave you some of my suppositions or suspicions of why they're lying. But ultimately, you would have to ask the Humanist report, Mike over there at the Humanist report, why he's lying about these things. And again, it just seems to me that these guys, like these humanists, are all for regulations. They're all for a fascist economy where the government regulates almost every aspect of a business without owning it. And that's fascism, socialism, communism. They're three economic systems that are authoritarian in nature and eventually will lead to human suffering and harm, because eventually if they get enough control, they're going to go after folks like me that don't believe in what they're doing, don't believe that type of economic control from the government. We talked about this yesterday, economy, where the politicians are the ones controlling the economy. And that's borderline fascism. That the politicians have the knowledge they need to order the economy, and it's laughable in the extreme that they think they have that much knowledge, especially when they don't know the individual Americans' wants, needs, or desires, even at a group level. Even at a group level. Government is not divine. Government is not omniscient. They don't know everything. Matter of fact, politicians probably know less than the general public as a whole, or in part, or small groups, especially when it comes to economic decisions. And so you need to really, really take what some of these sites are talking about with a grain of salt to investigate them. And if you're political and you follow politics like I do, or you follow me because I follow politics, I try to be accurate on the show. I try to get the stories right. And when I hear something that isn't right, I try to point that out. And again, it amazes me. He has over 150,000 subscribers that some of them haven't investigated what he's saying to see if it's true or not. They take him at face value. I don't want you to take me at face value. If I said something wrong, I want you to correct me. But you need to correct me with facts, not just what you believe should be. You need to correct me with what is. And a lot of these lies are so easily debunked, like this one with the pass-through. Oh, this was a last-minute provision that they added in to get a couple senators' votes. No, it wasn't. But people are going to listen to this, Michael, and they're going to believe him and get all upset. Well, yeah, they're just buying votes with this provision. When it's not the case. And when it's not the case that anybody that makes under $75,000 in the country isn't going to get a tax break. It's absolutely not the case. And I just proved it to you. I just showed you the numbers. Again, it's just unreal. Unreal. Now, one of the other things that they're talking about here, not in this video, I'm done with the video for now. This is by Susan Jones over at cnsnews.com, posted it today. Trump, fake news media is blasting tax cuts while companies start spreading the wealth. Now, one of his articles that Michael over at the Humanist Report put out was CEOs aren't waiting for the tax bill to pass. They are already starting pocketing the windfalls, by David Dayen over at theintercept.com. And my answer to that is, so what? So what if they're already pocketing the windfalls? And you go through it, and the title of the article is misleading, because it's like they're stuffing money in their pockets. That's what he's trying to, in my opinion, that's what he's trying to get across in this title, and that's not the case. He's talking about how they're buying back stocks. Well, one of the reasons, I don't know all the reasons, I know one of the reasons why companies buy back stock is because they're building infrastructure and trying to build out their product brand or whatever. Rocky Mountain High Brands. They did a stock buyback not too long ago, and that's because they're building a new plant up in the Catskills below Albany, a new bottling plant up there. Actually, they got spring water and everything that they're going to actually be creating and bottling it up in New York. And two, they just signed a 3-year deal with a importer down in Mexico that's going to take I don't know what the amount is, but it is huge. A huge amount of production that they're going to sell in Mexico. But in order to do a couple of these deals to get the production up, they had to have capital to work with. And one of the reasons why you buy back your stocks is to make your stocks worth more, not less, worth more. And then when you sell them back out, you can have the capital you need to build out. That's one of the reasons. Like I said, I'm not a financial expert, but I can do some research. That's one of the reasons why companies buy back. Now, Susan says here in a Thursday morning tweet, President Trump again confronted the liberal news media for adopting the Democrat line on tax cuts, that they are great for wealthy but bad for the middle class. Trump wrote, the massive tax cuts, which the fake news media is desperate to write badly about so as to please their Democrat bosses, will soon be kicking in and will speak for themselves. Companies are already making big payments to workers. Dems want to raise taxes and hate these big cuts because it's cutting into the food for their government, okay? At a White House news conference on Wednesday celebrating passage of the tax, President Trump announced some breaking news. This just came out 2 minutes ago. They handed it to me. AT&T plans to increase U.S. capital spending by $1 billion and provide $1,000 special bonuses to some 200,000 U.S. employees, and that's because of what we did. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You know, so the $1,000 to 200,000 employees, these are golden parachutes, right? These are paying back their corporate fat cat executives, right? Unreal. And there's more. The Boeing company on $100 million in employee-related and charitable investment as a result of the tax reform legislation. Comcast made the following announcement on Thursday. Now right there, just because I said Comcast, some people are already covering their ears going, la, 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 la. They don't want to hear it. Based on the passage of the tax reform and the FCC's action on broadband, Brian L. Roberts, chairman and CEO of Comcast, NBC, announced that the company will award special $1,000 bonuses to more than 100,000 eligible frontline and non-executive employees. Because of regulations, they didn't know where the regulations were going to go and how much that was going to cost them to comply with those regulations, and because the tax burden has been lowered, guess what? They are spreading the wealth around. All right? Roberts also announced that the company expects to spend well in excess of $50 billion over the next 5 years in investing in infrastructure to radically improve and extend our broadband plant and capacity and our television, film, and theme park offerings. With these investments, we'd expect to add thousands of new direct and indirect jobs. Wells Fargo announced on Wednesday that it will raise minimum hourly pay to $15 an hour and will target $400 million in donations to community and nonprofit organizations in 2018. The company also announced that beginning in 2019, it will target 2% of its after-tax profits for corporate philanthropy. We believe tax reform is good for the U.S. economy and are pleased to take these immediate steps to invest in our team members, communities, small businesses, and homeowners, said Wells Fargo President and CEO Tim Sloan. Meanwhile, insists that corporations will spend their extra cash on stock buybacks, executive bonuses, and dividends to enrich investors. But at the White House on Wednesday, Trump said many companies have said they're so happy and will be making announcements about employee bonuses and investments just as AT&T did. So we're going to see something that's going to be very special. We're bringing the entrepreneur back into the country. We're getting rid of all the knots and all the ties. We're going to see, we're going to see, you're going to see what happens. And ultimately, what does it mean? It means jobs, 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 jobs. So it's going to be really a very special period of time. We're in a special period of time. We're going to be even, it's going to be even more so, Trump said. Now, I just don't take Trump at face value. Again, we're talking about, and these are easily verifiable. And we're talking about, some of these companies are giving employees bonuses that they may have been holding off on because of uncertainty of the Obama administration, uncertainty of whether there was going to be a Hillary presidency or a Trump presidency. And I just say, and I know some humanists aren't going to like this, but thank God it wasn't Hillary. Thank God it wasn't Hillary, and thank God that we're able to start rolling back some of these regulations. And again, I've asked people that on chat rooms and stuff like that, on comments, I asked some of these pro-net neutrality folks, can you tell me, with the internet being a Title II, it was a Title II classification, the government's going to keep a light hand on the regulations. Yeah, it's the internet, of course they are. But Title II utilities, the history of them paints a very different picture of the heavy hand of government regulation and corruption that are one thing. One of the biggest things that getting rid of taxes, cutting taxes, getting rid of net neutrality, it takes some of the cronyism out of the picture. Because if your taxes, business taxes, if they're lowered to 21%, you're less likely to waste money on lobbying to get more and benefits that stifle competition because your tax burden is lower. See how that works? Regulations. If you have less regulations, there's no reason to waste money, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a waste of money to go in and practice crony capitalism on bureaucrats, on politicians who are, like in the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House, who are over the FCC. And again, one last thing. I left a note last night on. Let me find out where I'm at here. I left a note, a message, and I put hashtag kill net neutrality, because Representative Blackburn from Tennessee has introduced a bill to do just that, to kill off any type of net neutrality coming up in the future. And this is what we need. We need legislation coming from Congress that is going to kill net neutrality until another Congress comes in and reverses a former Congress. But the thing is, if Congress makes a law, the FCC can't reverse it by just a 3 to 2 vote, because Congress made a law about it. Now, what humanists and secularists and Democrats and regressives out there, what they're trying to do is either use state attorneys to sue the FCC into reversing, but I don't think that's going to work because only Congress has the oversight. See what I'm saying? I've seen a couple stories on this, and I haven't reported it to you. I'm just sort of researching it now. But some of the folks that I respect are saying that these state lawsuits aren't going to go anywhere because Congress has the ultimate authority over the bureaucracies, not the courts. And individual states saying, well, we're going to keep net neutrality in our states, might be in violation of the Commerce Clause to keep regular commerce. And so some of these states are going to cut their own nose off to spite their own faces. And again, it's just going to be a debacle for those states. So what I'm hoping is that Blackburn and this bill gets going. The other bill that they had started to reinstate net neutrality has and I checked it just this morning, it has a 5%, let me see here if they've updated that yet, has a 5% chance of even going through. And the reason why that is, let's see, GovTrax. Anyway, it was about saving net neutrality, and it's if you go to GovTrax, it says it only has a 5% chance of even passing. It's totally partisan, Democrats only. No Republicans have supported it. I haven't checked it because he just announced it yesterday, and I don't think it got marked up and into committee yet or even sponsored yet. But I'm going to check on that today and report on it tomorrow about the other bill to kill net neutrality by Blackburn. Of course, the humanists out there, especially Michael on the Humanist Report, said that this is a bogus thing that she's doing. It's like, wait a minute. If she's passing legislation and it gets passed that kills your innocuous net neutrality, which is that's the way bills are put forth, folks. They put these names on. Oh, we're going to keep the net neutral and open for you through regulation. And we're going to do this for you because we love you and we care for you. Has nothing to do with power or anything else like that. It really doesn't. Folks, don't believe them. Go do your own research, please. Please go do your own research. If you like this show, give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. If you don't like the show, give me a thumbs down. But please leave me a comment why you don't like it or why you do like it. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the notification button so you know when new videos come out. And I'm also looking for patrons. I have a Patreon account set up, and I have a link in the show notes page to that. Plus, if you don't like to go through Patreon, I have a PayPal that you can donate through and hopefully make monthly payments or monthly contributions to the show. And the money will go to further improve the show and expand it and make it the best Christian political commentary show on YouTube. This has been Dan Clements. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your Constitution warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, folks. And God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow for Free for All Friday at noon. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you then.